Shawn Whitman from Zoo Atlanta. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Attraction Pros COVID-19 video series. Great to have the opportunity to chat with you today. How have you been?
I've been great. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks.
Yeah, we're excited to chat with you. So at this time, at the time of this recording, Zoo Atlanta is open. You mentioned to us you are currently in phase 2A. What does that
Right.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. So, we like a lot of other places. We were open on Saturday, March 14th, and then we made the decision midway through the day that we were going to close at 5:30 that afternoon and be closed until who knows when. And then we did reopen on Saturday, May the 16th. So we were closed for a good portion of time. And you know, with a zoo or aquarium, there, like any attraction, there are fixed costs, but those fixed costs are different when you're caring for living animals. So we still had to operate in a way so that we could care for all the animals that are here with us. And so we had to make some really quick changes to make sure that we were protecting the animals in our care and protecting and taking care of the keepers, so that we didn't have problems with half the team being wiped out. So we made some quick changes there, and they worked really hard while we were closed. And then when we started our reopening, we brought together a pretty large team of folks to start planning, because we all see things a little bit differently. So our phase one reopening involved and still involves a one-way path through the zoo. So it's almost like walking a trail in the forest or getting in a lazy river. So you move your way through the zoo in one direction. Like a lot of other attractions, we do have social distancing in place. So we have lines or spots on the ground. Of course, people come to the zoo to learn more and to see the animals. So we have viewing boxes on the ground where a family or a pod can stand together and see the animals and learn more and hear from our team members about what the animals are doing. The only buildings we have open are the restrooms. We've covered all of the bronze statues with the exception of 3 memorials. So we just kind of blocked those off, but we felt like we wanted to keep those uncovered just to honor those that are honored in those statues. And we canceled all of our shows, the keeper talks, the scheduled feedings. We have hand sanitizing all over the zoo. And then we have teammates absolutely everywhere. And not just our education and guest experience teammates. We have the accounting team, the development team, marketing, folks that are usually doing a lot of work behind the scenes to help the zoo run that are now out in a guest-facing position. And they're greeting our guests and answering questions and helping direct our guests around. And we're doing time ticketing for the first time in a really long time. So that was a new adventure for us and our members and our guests. And so now the whole experience is about an hour and a half, 2 hours through the zoo. All of that went really well. So now we've opened up some more of the pathways that we had truncated so guests can see more of the animals throughout the zoo. Our phase 2A reopening includes opening one of our buildings. So we decided not to require a mask because we are an outdoor facility and the city and the state said that we didn't have to require them. So all of our team members are wearing masks, but the guests could decide if they wanted to or not. With the one building that has the lemurs and some of the birds in it, guests do have to wear masks for those, and we do have masks available on site that guests can purchase. But and I worked up there on Monday, and what we found is a lot of guests just have the mask in their bag, and they take them out, pop them on, take them back off. And we'll see how this goes. And then when our phase 2B, when we move forward with that, we're going to open our reptile, our scaly, slimy, spectacular building, which is really spectacular. So I'll be excited when we can open that back up.
Thank you so much for that kind of overview of kind of where you've been and kind of the 2A opening and things. And I'm curious, how have all these measures been received? Because that's one of the big questions. We didn't know how the guests are going to receive these and react and things like that. So can you kind of walk us through how they've reacted to some of these changes and now having the zoo open?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive. We're thrilled with the response. So A lot of guests or members are telling us along the pathway that they're enjoying the one-way flow. For anybody that has young children, you know, it can be difficult to direct them in a particular way, or they want to go right to the playground or the splash fountain or the train. Since those things aren't available, it's in a way almost a little easier for the parents because they can direct their kids on and, okay, let's see what the next thing down the pathway is going to be. Okay, we're going to go now see the gorillas, for example. So that's been very positive. A lot of our teammates, like I said before, are working on ground, so we're hearing that feedback from our guests, and a lot of our members or guests are just coming right up to teammates and telling them how much they appreciate everything. We do send an email survey out to all of our members and guests that have checked in on particular days, and we're asking them things like satisfaction, how safe did you feel at the zoo, what else could we be doing, and again, all that's been very, very positive. We obviously keep an eye on social media, TripAdvisor, Google, all those other sites, and thankfully those have all been very positive as well. We have received some good, specific, constructive feedback from guests, and so we've been able to pivot quickly and make some changes. We empowered all of our team members along the route to, you know, if it looks like guests are confused, move a sign, move a barricade, open it up, close an area off, just let your area manager know. And so we've been able to make these little tiny tweaks and really smooth out all the rough edges. Actually just had another email this morning from a member who they come regularly and they were so pleased with everything. And we try to share that feedback with all of our teammates so they know that their hard work is really appreciated.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. So you mentioned that guests appreciate the one-way traffic through the zoo, which is really interesting. Great to hear that from the guest standpoint. I'm kind of interested to hear from your standpoint, from the operator, of you have advanced reservations, you have time ticketing, you have one-way traffic, and you know, thinking of this kind of in this, you know, new normal, as they say, versus pre-COVID, where it was much more kind of come at your leisure, go which way you want, leave at your leisure. And now you know when guests are coming, you know which way they're going, you know how long they're taking through the zoo, and you know when they're leaving. Do you feel kind of a greater sense of control over the guest experience as a result?
I would say yes. I would say yes. So the nice thing is we can set up our teammates along the route so that those that are working near the beginning of the route, their day might start earlier, but then they end earlier. And then we can schedule teammates a little bit later on in the route. Restaurants and retail have more time to set up if they're further down the route. So that's been quite helpful. One thing we do at the end of the day is we make a radio call to say, okay, in the last hour, we've had X number of guests come through. So you'll know what the last hour is going to feel like. And then we have team members who will follow but not follow the last guest through the zoo, so they stay a safe distance away from them so that guest doesn't feel pressured to keep moving. But as they move through an area, they tell the team members, you're released for the day, or they'll walk by the animal habitat and they'll call the keepers for that animal and say, you can go ahead and bring those animals in for the day. Whereas in the past, if we've been open till 5:30, some areas may have to bring in animals a little earlier than closing. So if a guest, for example, gets all the way back to orangutans and we're getting close to closure, they may have pulled the animals back inside for the night and the guests may have missed them. So this way, it helps us make sure that all the way through our last guest or member that's coming through, they're getting to experience the full zoo in the way that we want them to.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like that operational park sweep, right? When you at the end of the night anyway, you have to sweep the park to make sure everybody's out. Well, you're following those last guests, so you know that they're already out. Really, really interesting way that you've kind of adopted that. So I'm curious too, from an employee standpoint, you know, a lot of people have talked about, you know, do our employees want to come back? Are they feeling safe? It feels like you've done a lot of things to try to make them feel safe working there. So I'm curious, you know, kind of what was the staff feeling when they came back, and what was some of the feedback you got from them?
Yeah, great question. And this is really a time when, as leaders, we need to have individual conversations and realize that every team member is maybe different. You know, when we all closed down and had to start working from home and being from home, everybody's journey was a little bit different. We all felt different levels of comfort with this. So when HR started to call our team members back and say, hey, you know, person that works in accounting or development, your role's going to evolve a little bit. So you need to come on grounds and have a tour before we open. And as we were having those conversations, there were some team members who said, yes, I'm ready to come back. I have finished Netflix. I've got nothing else to do. So I'm ready to come back into the zoo and help out. I'm so excited about it. We had others who were on the fence. I've been to the grocery store once or twice and feeling more comfortable. There were others that were a little bit more cautious about coming back and maybe didn't feel quite as comfortable. And so we had to have those conversations with them and understand why they were feeling the way that they were and be respectful of the way that they were feeling. With a lot of those teammates, once we walked them through the zoo, we had tours with 10 or fewer team members at a time, walking them through the entire experience on what our guests are going to see and experience, and we could answer all their questions. On the tours that I gave, I know I had a handful of team members who were on the fence at first, but once we got to the end, they pulled me aside and said, this made me feel so much more comfortable. Thank you. I know what we're going to experience when we get here. As we were positioning team members in their spaces, we thought about what's that teammate's safety plan. So like a lot of us that are reopening, there may be glass or plexiglass between us and the guests if we really can't escape from them or step away from those guests. There are other teammates along the route that they're in a pretty wide open area, so they can step away. All of our teammates are wearing buttons like this that just says, hi, for my safety, please keep 6 foot distance. And this is an idea that we borrowed, I think, from Home Depot or some other places. So a lot of our teammates have an escape plan or they have a plan to where they can feel safe. And we also told them, if you don't feel safe, step away, go behind the scenes, talk to your area manager, and we can find a way to help you feel more comfortable. And sometimes it was putting up another piece of plexiglass around an area where they are, or getting them a face shield, or putting some stanchions around the area, or really, in some cases, we were able to eliminate some roles because that role really couldn't have been done by a sign. So we were able to move those teammates. So really, I think by taking the time to listen to our teammates and see how they were feeling and then constantly checking in with them throughout the journey, it helped them feel more comfortable with coming back.
How do you envision that going forward into the future, particularly looking at it from a policy and procedural standpoint? Because there's a lot of HR policies that are very much kind of, in stone as far as, sick days and policies from that standpoint. How do you plan to manage that with employees, whether it's from, sick day policy, or if for whatever reason they don't feel comfortable enough to come to work?
Yeah. So again, those are those individual conversations that we're trying to have with them and explain we need you back. How can we help you feel more comfortable with that? Okay, you're not feeling comfortable. What are some things that we can do to where you can continue to support the organization? So there are some HR things, some FMLA things. So I know I have some team members, and we have some team members who they really can't come back for various reasons because we don't want to they may be in a high risk group. So they're supporting the organization in a different way, maybe behind the scenes. Maybe they're answering the phones more. Maybe they're answering emails. They're fundraising. They're doing other things to help support the teammates. So for those of us that have to maybe spend more time on grounds than when we had before, they're picking up some of that slack to help support those of us that need to be outside and help our guests more. So they're contributing in a way. They're valued and they're important, so that they're helping us along the route, so that the teammates that are physically able to go out and do that, they can. There are some times when we get into, okay, now we're crossing into policy zone, and that's where we have a fantastic HR team that comes in and helps us. And again, we listen to the teammate and we see how can we support them, and where does this fall in with the guidelines, and then we kind of take that journey together.
Shawn, I'm curious. I remember when I was working at Universal, and we had these times when it was really, really busy and everybody from the back of house had to come out and help, right? And that's kind of what it sounds like is happening with you. Your accountants, your development people, they're all out front now. I'm curious how that process went, because sometimes accountants are accountants for a reason, and that's not a bad thing, but they're more comfortable, working on their own and that kind of thing. And now you're throwing them out into the wild, if you will. So how did that process go?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Accountants are also very efficient. So they find ways to make things more efficient. It may not be a numbers thing, but they also help us find ways to make it a more efficient experience for our guests, right? So Because we have guests that'll drive 2 or 3 hours away just to come to Zoo Atlanta because they want to see the pandas or our new African savanna. So, so they supported us in that way in the planning. But we do something called Zoo Squad, and at Zoo Atlanta with Zoo Squad, spring break usually those 9 days, and sometimes it's even 2 weeks because we have a lot of school systems in Atlanta. So for that period of time, everybody has to sign up for 1 to 2 Zoo Squad days for spring break. We do an annual training for all of our team members on just general guest experience. We do some a video series called Take Two. They're 2 to 3 minute videos that just kind of reinforce the things that we've learned during those trainings. So those team members sign up for those things, and they've done that during spring break. We have Fulton County Family Days. So we do 1 free weekend a year for residents of Fulton County and City of Atlanta. So we all have to work one of those shifts. And then we do Boo at the Zoo, which is the trick-or-treating through the zoo. So they have to work one of those too. So thankfully, all of those teammates have done this before. So it's not a brand new concept to them. But they also understand that we just need more team members on grounds to help us manage that guest experience. Thankfully, there are a lot of teammates that are on grounds, so if there's a question that they don't know, or if they're being challenged in a way that's new for them, we have plenty of on-grounds teammates that are there to support them. So thankfully, this wasn't a brand new thing. We just said, okay, we were closed for spring break, so those shifts that you would have worked, we're going to maybe quadruple those, but you're going to work those during this time. So it's gone really well.
That's great.
Yeah. Shawn, I'm curious too, and this is kind of, switching gears a little bit. And, I realize it's not something that Matt and I have covered kind of in this video series here, but, you're in the city of Atlanta. I know you're just, kind of very close to the downtown area, and, just having opened, several weeks ago. And then with everything else that has kind of happened in a lot of major city populations over the last couple of weeks or so, with protests and with demonstrations. I'm in the city of Chicago. It was basically just a couple blocks away from me of people protesting. Did that impact your operation at all? And how did that then merge with kind of all the preparations and procedures COVID related?
Yeah. So I think the very first weekend that all this was happening in Atlanta, we did see our call volume go up. Well, honestly, we saw the call volume go up when we moved over to time ticketing, so we were ready for that. We did see that particular weekend. Unfortunately, we did have some guests who they just weren't comfortable with coming into the city to come see us. So we were able to take care of those refunds or reschedules. And again, we want to treat people like people, just like we treat our teammates. And if they didn't feel like they were ready to come downtown right now to come see us, it wasn't a problem. We were happy to give them a refund to come back. Or we would reschedule them if we could. We had some folks that really just weren't ready to come. The good news is that opened up a lot of walk-ups spaces for us, and we had probably the same number of walk-ups come in and see us. And these were our other neighbors or members or guests that they were comfortable with coming to see us. We also wanted to be very sensitive to how all of our teammates were feeling during that time. So again, it was treat our people like individuals, or treat our people like people, and have check-ins with them and see how they're feeling. And is this a high stress time for them? And can we have these discussions with them about how they feel that their opinions being heard, and are we having discussions that we need to have? Our CEO sent an email out to all of our team members, letting them know that everybody is supported here, and resources that we have available for our teammates to help them feel more comfortable. But the good news is overall, for the folks that chose not to come, hopefully they're going to come back later. We had a lot of other members and guests and team members who continue to support us through this period of time. So we were happy to welcome them.
Shawn, I'm curious too, kind of getting back to the operational piece. What do you see lasting, like in terms of your operation and things that you're doing now that might last? We'll say probably, at least months or, part of the year going forward, but even years into the future. Like, do you see the time ticketing? Do you see the one-way zoo path? You know, what sort of things do you see maybe that are working really well now that might actually become part of your standard operating procedure?
Mm-hmm. I don't think the one-way path will continue once we move into our final phase, which is kind of back to normal, because guests do like to choose their own adventure through the zoo. However, I think it would help us provide a recommended path for our guests, especially for folks that may be coming in from out of town or who have never been to see us before. The one-way path that we have right now, we put so much thought into this, and then we changed it, and then we put more thought into it, and then we changed it again. You get to see nearly everything through the zoo, and especially the animals that are more charismatic too, but really you get to see all of the animals. So we might be able to provide a recommended path through the zoo moving forward. The viewing boxes have been a huge hit in some of our bigger animal areas. So we do have a challenge sometimes where guests that are in maybe a wheelchair or our younger, smaller guests may not be able to see because there are other guests in front of them. So we might be able to provide more of those viewing boxes for our guests with those needs so that they can have the same experience as our other guests. We will, I think, hopefully move forward with some more contactless credit card payments. We found that to be very successful. And I'm hoping we'll pull the plexiglass down over time, but if that helps our teammates feel more comfortable, we might leave that up. The nice thing about the time ticketing, and I looked at our numbers last night, is it's really kind of leveled out the entire visitation. So normally this time of year, we'd see this big spike up 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But now we see this 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so it's kind of leveled out that experience for everybody. So while time ticketing has been great, we'll probably go back to normal there. But and then the other thing I think that all of our teammates hopefully will take from this is that, you know, we really need to understand where our guests are. We need to walk in their shoes. If they're uncomfortable about something, we need to understand that and be respectful and empathetic about that so we can help them have a great experience while they're here.
Sure. Yeah, very nice. Well, Shawn, this has been a really interesting conversation, you know, with everything over the last couple of months and all of the uncertainty and the unknowns, and knowing that there's still a lot of unknowns ahead of us. It's great to have conversations like this to see not only how, you know, what these new procedures are, but like you said, the guest response to them, the staff response to them, and now, you know, knowing what it really looks like to operate and, you know, operate efficiently and operate effectively. And you said taking that guest feedback and making continual changes and updates as that continues to come in and as we continue to move forward. So we really appreciate your time today and for sharing all that with us.
Yeah, of course. I used to work for the YMCA, and I had a supervisor once who said YMCA stands for you may copy anything within reason, within legal term. And so I always took that to mean, you know, look and see what other zoos, aquariums, attractions are doing. You may be able to copy that. Don't go through all the hard work of trying to come up with it on your own. So I reached out to so many peers across the industry, saw a lot of podcasts, including y'all's and others, to help us get some really good ideas so that we didn't have to recreate this whole playbook that everybody's recreating. So, you know, I hope this inspires some other folks to build out their plans. And I know everybody's doing a really good job and working really hard to take care of our teammates and our members and our guests. So thanks again for your time today.